Welcome to the DL Gaming Podcast, adding games both old and new to your backlog, one slightly inappropriate episode at a time. My name is Christian, and I'm Funcom and fucked up, and joining me today is Amanda.
Yeah, is that a shy halud in your pocket, or are you just looking to add a little bit of spice?
And Bobby.
And I'm in denial about the crafting survival revival.
Wow.
Ooh.
Okay. This week we're going to be
bars.
Oh, God damn, we were prepared. So this week we're going to be talking about survival crafting games and it as a genre. So why we like it, why we hate it, why at least me and Amanda are addicted to Dune Awakening. I blame a couple people, Denis Villeneuve, Funcom for making this stupid ass game, and the Butlerian Jihad. If you know, you know. So I think we're going to start off, Bobby famous, opposed to the crafting survival genre. Don't get a tree that he has to knock down within 100 meters of this guy. He'll just leave the party and not play the game. So Bobby, what's going on? Why do you feel this way? Why do you feel so strongly?
Well, first I thought we'd start with a little history of crafting survival, just so we're coming at this at the right angle. And I think it all started with Minecraft, right? Like that came out late 2000s and just exploded. But then shortly after it, like there in the early 2010s, there were a ton of these games, these crafting survival games. This was about the time that early access was becoming popular. So people could make these games themselves, get them out there, and like, that really wasn't possible before. So I feel like crafting survival really rode on the back of the early access train that we saw back then.
Yep.
But the problem with that was that most of these games were just janky, unfinished projects. They were just not well made. They were still fun, but just not well made. I mean, they had bad graphics, the mechanics were buggy, and they just had really bad hitboxes. And a couple of these that come to mind, like the early ones that I played, were Rust, The Forest, even DayZ, I guess you could consider under that. But despite all that, these remained very popular games. Like, people just flocked to these. It was a real big craze. And I think that was because you had the freedom to do whatever you wanted in these games. You could just write your own story in a game. And that really went against everything we were used to in gaming up until that point. Like it just was, every game was very scripted, planned events. Everybody had the same experience for the most part. I mean, there were some that kind of broke the mold, but for the most part, like we had never seen something like this where you just had like this complete freedom to do whatever you want. And it was also a new type of multiplayer. Like you could group up with people just ad hoc. Like you just find some people and, hey, do you want to group up? And you would form these very flimsy alliances. You didn't know if you could trust them. There was nothing in the game that said, nope, you're on the same team. Now, there's no friendly fire. You can't hurt them. They can't hurt you. It was like, no, anything could happen here. And that kind of just blew people's mind. It was almost like a social experiment, if you will.
Totally.
And I think that's what really drew people to crafting survival.
The best clips of DayZ are exactly that. It's like two people in an alleyway. They're like, hey, you want to be friends? And then like 10 minutes later, guy A shoots guy B in the face. Like, sorry, dude, I wanted those bandages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, no. Yeah. Things could just flip on a dime like that. Friends become enemies. Yeah. It was really cool. I mean, I'll be honest, like I had some good times in these and everybody had a story, right? Like everybody would tell you, I was playing DayZ and then like I met up with these guys and then we were friends and then this happened and we went over here and we ran into these other guys, but then I joined up with them and betrayed the team. Like everybody had a story like that and they told it as if they were just walking down the street and something happened to them in real life. And like that just didn't happen in games before. So crafting survival gave that to us, which was cool. But along with it, there were a lot of problems with this genre. And I know I am like, everybody knows if you listen to the podcast, this is probably one of my least favorite genres. So I guess that's why I'm in charge of this section that we're starting off with, talking about all the problems. So the first one for me is it just feels like a lot of busy work. You got to run around, collect resources, organize your inventory, even the base building. Like there's just a lot of busy work to these games and it can feel a little grindy, especially when these gameplay loops become repetitive. You end up just having to do the same thing over and over again. And of course, that's going to lose its excitement. There's also things that come along with these games inevitably, like hunger and thirst mechanics. And it's like, not only it kind of drags you down a little bit. Like it's like, I want to go out, have fun, fight people and stuff, but it's like, oh, got to eat a sandwich, or I'm going to be hungry. Can't go fight zombies on an empty stomach.
No, you need to equip your still suit, Bobby, but we'll get to that in a bit. We'll get to what Dune's doing. Yeah.
And one game that I did not play, but I feel like took this to an extreme, was Scum. And I think that game's still out there. I think they're still updating it. I think they even were advertising it recently at one of these gaming events that we had recently. But there were games that took that whole survival thing to the extreme. Like you could get sunburnt and stuff. It was just ridiculous. But yeah, I was not a fan of that.
Bring your SPF. If you picked the light colored skin tone on character creation, you need to apply sunscreen every 20 minutes.
SPF 30 or above. Yeah.
Well, you do touch on something really good, though. Like a lot of times there's a spectrum in terms of the survival aspect of these crafting survivals. Some of them err more on the side of, you just need to eat and that's it, and your energy levels. And then some of them get really into the weeds and get really nitpicky and like really deep with it. I do think Dune's one of them, but you're right, Scum and like some of these other ones they're hardcore. They're like the Tarkov of survival. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's kind of, but I don't know. How is that any different than like Dark Souls with the constantly dying and the different roguelikes and things like that? I mean, it's an element of difficulty for sure in survivals is the survival part.
Yeah. And a lot of this is going to be just me and my opinion and like what I look for in games. So it's not like it's objectively bad, although some of it is. Another problem we saw like early on, I feel like this got better, but a lot of the games became the same. They had these predictable progression paths. And I always talk about this as the tree chopping cycle. Like you start the game, they throw you on a beach somewhere, you go punch a tree to get wood, then you use that wood to craft an axe to chop more wood. And then with that wood, you make like a house so you can store the wood that you chopped. And it's just like this endless cycle. So like, that I hate tree chopping. Like anytime I see that in a game, I'm just like, oh God, I know where this is going. But one of the bigger issues that I think the games have, at least for me, and this is going to be depending on the person here, there's no clear objectives. This changed in later titles. So Subnautica, even Phoning Home, which was a single player one, they started adding story and like narrative progression, kind of like quests, I guess. And it was leading up to something and you could actually complete and finish the game. And I loved Subnautica. Like that was actually one of the crafting survival games that I really, really got into. But it's a trade-off. I mean, you give people the complete freedom to do whatever they want, but then you take away that narrative progression or like the point of the game. Because really in your traditional crafting survival, your whole motivation is just don't die. And it's like, I mean, I could stand there and do that. I mean, I guess I got to need a sandwich and drink some water, but like it kind of robs you of the motivation that games typically provide you to move forward. So it doesn't work on every player. Some people are just fine with that. There's also an issue with solo play. So
with losers with no friends. Sorry, if you're out there. That's what Bobby thinks, not me. I'm paraphrasing.
Well, also, if you don't have an internet connection,
right.
If you live in a part of the world where your internet isn't great or doesn't exist, then it becomes difficult too. Like you have to play this game online and you have to play it with a lot of people. Otherwise, it's just not going to be the same and it's not going to be fun. So for people who prefer solo play, it's very difficult. And also if you're just not a very communicative player, like if you don't like talking on mic, like it severely detracts from the gameplay experience. So it does kind of limit itself in that way, although that does not seem to have hurt its popularity there. Now, the biggest problem, this is my last point here, but the biggest problem is the time sink for me. These games take a long time. If you look at people, I know Amanda loves Ark. If you look at the hours played on her Steam profile, I'm guessing
900?
1,000?
What?
We'll get a reading on that. We'll give her a minute to look that up.
Yeah, I got you. It's 804 hours.
804.
Nice.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the kind of time that you can expect to like invest in one of these games if you get really into it. But the thing is, it's fine if you spend a ton of time playing games. That's no problem. But the thing is, most of that time is long stints of boring, not doing anything, building up to something. And then you have these like moments that are just really exciting, like where something happens. And then that's the story you go and tell your friends about, like, you know, something cool that happened to you in the game. But like, there's a lot of lead up to that. And there's a lot of just like hanging out, not doing a whole lot, which can have its own social aspect. But really, there's a lot of dead time in the game, and that's difficult for me. I kind of like, if I play a game, I want to get right into it and get into the action. I think some games have gotten better at that. What was Enshrouded, I believe was the name of the game that we played recently. That one got into the action pretty quickly too. So I feel like they're kind of aware of that issue when they develop these games now, and they speed it up a little bit. But what can also happen with this is like, you've got different people with different amounts of free time. So if you're playing with your friends, you'll get out of sync. And we've probably all experienced this, where one person works from home or something, and they just like plow through.
Called out. Someone we won't name. Some people who work from home.
Not gonna name
He's
names.
grinding Dune Awakening right now.
Yeah, literally on the podcast, which I believe somebody has done when what was that Amazon MMO that came out?
Oh yeah, New World.
New World.
Yeah. Yeah, it's happened, folks.
Saw the reflection in the glasses. Did giveaway. That was so funny. Okay, yeah.
But somebody with a lot of extra free time will grind through the content, and then you come home from work and you're like, all right, I'm ready to play. Oh my God, you've already like built this giant base, and like we've progressed like through all this, which I mean is cool, but like I missed out on all that content. So, you know, you can get out of sync with the people that you're playing with. And also in the, like, if you're playing against people, pretty much the person with the most time wins, right? So the time thing is probably my biggest sticking point with crafting survival. It's just like, and that's always the thing that I bring up when people say like, oh, new crafting, even with Dune, it's looking great. Everyone's asking me if I'm playing it. I'm just like, man, I don't know if I got the time. Like, that's just the reality of it, unfortunately.
Totally.
But tell me why I'm wrong. Like,
well, I don't know if you're wrong. Amanda, I think when we think about crafting survivals, we come back to one thing that we have to remember, and it's an acronym that we all know, BOBBY, Bobby for short. And so I think you bring up a lot of great points, Bobby, in what you're talking about. But why I like it is the first B, building things. So like the pull for Minecraft to me was adult Lego, basically. And I think that's what these games do so well. You feel like you can manipulate the environment in really satisfying ways. And it's even better when you can manipulate the environment and that affects some aspect of gameplay in like a clever and like out of the box way. So like if I play Minecraft with my brother, the first thing he's going to do is make like a sheep farm out of like lava and a bunch of bricks. And he loves the switches in that game. He loves all the base building components that affect gameplay. And very few games let you tackle a problem so creatively, right? It's like, go here, do this, go here, do this. Maybe there's a couple different ways you can do this, but in Minecraft, which I think is like the quintessential example, it's like, nah, you want to get to this end goal, defeat this elder dragon, but to get there, you can take basically every fucking way known to man. You know, like you can do so much and you don't even have to get there. And a part of that is just building really awesome shit. The letter in Bobby is O, so that's organizing things. Guys, I'm what they call, I think a base bitch. Like I'm at the base. I'm like, oh, the ore goes here. All our weapon parts go over here, but someone put a bandage in the weapon parts and that doesn't belong. And so I'm like trying to reorganize where everything is so it makes sense, make signs, make it organized. And I know it's busy work and I know it's not really gameplay, but like I like doing that. You know, I just like organizing things. I think it's just a base human need. Something like digging a hole, right? It's digging a hole is one, and organizing things is two, and that's something I like to do. And then the third letter B in Bobby is breathtaking things. So I think New World got this so well, where it's like you feel like you're on an epic journey because like the skyline and everything you're seeing is just visually stunning, and you're like, oh wow, that's beautiful. Like I know I'm in a video game, but like if I'm really immersed and the game has done a good job, that sense of like wonder when you look at something far away and it's breathtaking, I think is awesome. And Dune has that in spades, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. I think the fourth letter is B again. You know, Bobby is bonding, so it's like it is a social experiment, and I feel like it's the best type because the stories that you build with Amanda was just talking the other day about people she played Ark with. She was telling like a specific story, and that was like what, 8 years ago or something. She's like,
yeah,
dude, this one, yeah. And Bobby brought that up too. And that's, I don't know, again, like even MMOs, I think you can have those types of stories, but more often than not, they have hard guardrails on what you can do in the game that don't exist in crafting survival. So the bonding, that's the fourth letter. And then the Y is yes and. So when you're playing with the people, people are like, hey, you want to do this? And then you're like, yeah, let's do this. And then let's do that. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And let's do that. And before you know it, you've gone on this like fucking epic adventure through 4 people's quests. You've gotten like 10 new different crafting materials. You've seen new enemy types. And it's just like, if you go into this game with your friends and you are just open to having any sort of experience, I think that's the way that these games should be played, right? You're meant to go on these kind of epic, unscripted adventures. And yeah, that's what crafting survival does. So if you're out there and you're like, why do I like crafting survivals? Just remember Bobby, the acronym BOBBY. That's why I like these games. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, and kind of leading into that, I'm going to touch base on some of the things too that you guys also talked about. Like kind of like you said, I mean, to me, so much about crafting survivals that I love is really about community. It's one of the few game genres that I feel like you could argue or make the case that the community on the server is part of the mechanic, which is really bizarre and like a very, I don't know, like fourth wall way of like playing a game, which is really interesting because that kind of community can make or break it, even if it's solo. There's I have played so many hours in crafting survivals solo, but part of that is because I'm psycho, and part of what Bobby hates about it of being the grind and busy work, but what Christian loves about it, I also love about it. I've always viewed games like Ark and crafting survivals to be like creating a mandala or like a Zen garden where you're putting all of this time in, and it's therapeutic to me. It helps me get rid of stress, and it's very calming and relaxing for me to do part of that grind. So I think fundamentally, you know, maybe that part of it, because that is a huge part of a crafting survival, is the grind. And there are definitely people that are going to kind of find comfort in that, and there are people that are going to fucking hate it. And so, you know, but to me, it's like a Zen garden. Like I put all this time and energy and effort into it, but I'd argue that so many of our hobbies are like that. We're putting tons of time into things, and then maybe not everybody, but also too, like if anybody's got multiple hobbies, it's kind of like that. You put a bunch of time into something and then you get sidetracked and you go to a different hobby. So it just sits there and it waits. And so I feel like in ways this can kind of be like that. But to me, it's so much about the community because like Christian said, there are these stories that you have that like stay rent free forever in your mind. I literally became part of DLG because of one of these stories. I was playing Dark and Light, which is a game nobody fucking knows, but I put almost 300 hours into it in like 2015. And I started the game and I was building my little like piece of shit wooden, like I wanted to build a beautiful little like wooden cabin on a river, because that's another part of what I love about these games that Christian touched on, which is the creativity. It's endless, the creativity that can go into these games, especially as you jump game to game and world to world. There's so much, from like building beautiful, breathtaking places, like some gorgeous waterfall estate on top of a mountain in Ark, or we did, or the kind of creativity that comes from tactics of PvP, because I've put in so many hours into Ark, and I've played both a lot of PvP and PvE, and they are two totally different games, which I think is so good in terms of getting the most amount of money out of a game. If you can play a game and you're getting 2 video games in 1 video game, that's great. But anyway, going back to the story thing, I built this base, and SOCOM's a long-standing member of the community, and he built this like metal base in the distance, and all of a sudden I'm just sitting here doing my thing, and he comes crawling up, and I just hear somebody walking. I hear footsteps. So I get all like amped up. I get all armed, and I've got my arrows, and I got my bow and arrows, and I like get on the mic, and I'm just like, get the fuck away from my base, I think is what I said. Like, great introduction. I'm sure I seemed so friendly, but like he was like, oh no, I wanted to help you out and point out where points are, where parts of your base are weak, and like maybe you can adjust it. I can help you build stuff if you want. Like, he was super nice.
Great.
And yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm just being super defensive. And so he just wanted us to use the voice chat in DLG as like a way to play the game. And then I started looking into the podcast and the community and fell in love. And then now I'm here. So thank you, Crafting Survivals, and thank you, Dark and Light. Like I said, nobody plays it.
Take that, Bobby, by the way.
Yeah, take that, Bobby. I played that shit solo and found a fucking community from it.
That's awesome. But you bring up something like the community of the server is what makes the server. And like, there are some servers where people are griefing solo players filled with a bunch of try-hard dickholes. And then there are other servers where like, that's not the case. Like, people still like to PvP and they like to have fun, but they're not trying to like grief. I think the line from PvP to grief is a fine line. And I think it's way better when it's on just the PvP side and people are more open to like collaborating, because that's what shines in this game. Like, yeah, even if you are playing solo, you will meet up with another player and probably have a good time, which is kind of cool.
Oh yeah, like, and especially when I think to my time in Ark, and I'm seeing it already in Dune, like playing solo and finding random groups to mesh with has been so awesome. Like, I played so much of this Ark Aberration. It's one of their DLCs that they came out where basically you're diving into the depths of the planet, and you have all these different kind of dinosaurs that are really focused and centered on climbing and cave. It was like a cave dwelling kind of Ark, and there was an entire massive community. I just joined some random server, and the whole server was a community that worked really hard together on like role playing and being there for each other and supporting each other. And so in the game, everybody was so active, and they would schedule and organize these big like boss fight events and like moving through the quest. There's a story in Ark. Like, I don't know. I guess so. I found out about it by this community in the server, and there's just a whole bunch of random strangers, and I ended up joining their Discord, and it was like a few years where I was like really good friends with a lot of them. And then of course, like everything else, time, or roads and stuff like that. But it's just like such a wonderful memory to think of, but I really think of it's great with the community. And when you have friends and when you have a community like DLG to play these games with, it's so great. I mean, Valheim dominated our Discord for a while as well too, and I just remember how much fun it was riding boats around and hunting serpents and screaming and trying to avoid the death skeetos from the plantains world. And so and then recently with the plantains area, you know what I mean? And recently
like
we were playing
adjacent, like the banana adjacent vegetable, like plantains world.
Oh, no.
I don't understand. What's the plantain?
Oh, no, I fucked up. I meant the plane. Sorry. I'm just adding words, man.
I was like, there's a whole world featuring plantain.
Yeah, it's a whole, yeah, man. And that's how you make the best mofongo. But anyway, no, so it's the planes. I'm getting them all mixed up. But no, then And also, too, to kind of touch and go back on another thing that I absolutely love that I wanted to elaborate a bit more on is, and obviously the community causes so much bonding, like Christian said, the second B in that Bobby acronym, real important to remember.
Bonding.
But yeah, but to me, the creativity, I really want to elaborate on some of that because some of these games, again, like Ark, I've put obviously so much hours into that's the one that I feel the most comfortable talking the most about. But the kind of different bases and setups and the mods, once you start even adding mods to these kind of games, they just absolutely explode in terms of creativity. I created some elaborate, truly Zen garden that looked like something beautiful out of Japan in the middle of, the jungle in Ark, and it was just absolutely stunning. Is it, in line with how it would look in Ark? No, but it was great and it was beautiful. And so, but also too, really the creativity that goes into these PvP styles of this game is just impressive as fuck, because in Ark, people would build these massive labyrinths because the thing is that there's nothing more frustrating than putting all this time. And this is something that I definitely can agree, and sympathize with what Bobby's saying of really the winners are the ones that have the most time. And in PvP, you really feel it. I remember there was somebody that I used to play Ark with who, as soon as I started learning this toxicity, I was like, no thanks. But they would straight up make an Excel sheet of when everybody that they would notice on the other team when they go to bed. So they would know the prime time to go to, and I'm like, thank you. That's what I said. Nah, you know what? We don't have to be friends on Steam. I don't want, but this is to Bobby's point. Like, there are people out there on these PvP servers that are doing this shit where they're watching people and documenting when is the perfect time to attack them. And if I play any game that makes me feel guilty about sleeping, fuck that game. I don't want to play that. And so to me, playing PvP, especially on Ark, or like if we were to talk about Dune Awakening and PvP there, like to me, it has to be a very specific set of parameters and an environment for me to really want to do it, because otherwise it is exhausting trying to outcompete people who have so much time and, quite frankly, pettiness that they can win. And so, but the thing that kind of comes from it that's cool is this creativity of building. I played a lot of PvP in Rust, and that was really fascinating how my friends would do that. They would find a really great cave and then build an entire booby trap like maze into the cave, and then at the very bottom in the heart of the cave is where the actual base was, which on one hand was really smart and why their base survived like the longest. On the other hand was really frustrating because every time I'd spend hours chopping down trees and went to my base to put the wood away, I had to go through an entire labyrinth of booby traps and Indiana Jones it to my own house. And so
you're playing like a platformer in a crafting survival game just to drop off wood.
So see, 2 games in 1, fantastic, worth the buy.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. Like it's creative, and I think it's really, really cool. I was watching Shroud play Dune Awakening, and he's making these big PvP bases for their guild, and it's just the kind of work and the way that you have to think of how you're making that base is so different than if you're doing PvE. And I think that there's a really great space for both, and it's cool to have one video game that allows you to do both. Because the way that I would build a base in Ark if I'm playing PvP is so different than PvE. I mean, if it was PvE, I'd probably create like a Dilophosaurus ranch and just call it my little ranch dinos. And I did do that with my friend Abs. We literally just built dinosaur ranches and acted like we were on a prairie and homesteading a bunch of dinosaurs. And so it was really cute and wholesome. But anyway, I feel like with all these different kind of games, even though Bobby had talked about so many of the games, especially in the past, had all felt the same, I think that there is some truth to that. However, I do feel like with the worlds being so different, you really can I think the through line, so to say, that makes them all feel the same probably is the grind, and that whole mechanic of the grind of time sinking all of this time into cutting down trees and getting resources. Gathering resources really can be a bottleneck point for a lot of people for these kind of games. That there are servers, and there are private servers, especially in a lot of games, but even in Ark, there were servers where you could adjust that. You could max the resource gain to like 40%, so that way all you had to do was hit a tree once, and then you have your entire base built off of that. So there's ways to tweak
happens, that takes the fun out of the game. Like, I've been on servers like that, and I was like, oh, actually, there's no point. Actually, what I kind of like is the scarcity of resources making me make interesting and creative decisions. And when I don't have to worry about scarcity, I'm just not having to be creative. Like, the constraint is important. Yeah. But I think we should probably move on to Dune if we can because I think you touched on something really cool, is that in Dune, the PvP is in this like deep desert location. So I think they've taken, by the way, take this again, Bobby, they've taken your point. When are you launching on Dune? After this podcast, I feel like our whole point is just to convince you.
I know, right? And you know what? Before you say anything, I will say that a lot of the points that I made have been addressed. Like I'm not the only one who feels this way about a lot of these crafting survival games. So I feel like these are common complaints that people have. So the crafting survival games that they're making now, like specifically address these and are much better. So a lot of these more recent ones, like Abiotic Factory, that's actually a really good crafting survival game, and I'm sure Dune as well. It probably doesn't have a lot of the things that I complain about, at least not to the degree that the old ones had.
I think they listen to this podcast. There's no trees. It is a desert.
Yeah, and there's no trees.
Sand.
I hate sand.
And you do collect sand. Yeah, so I think you'd hate that part. But you might find it fun, because you did touch on a good point that like, I really feel that with Dune, there's a lot of ways where I think I was telling my ARC friends, because so many of my ARC friends are getting into this, but I was telling them that like Dune has seemed to streamline or like just made a bunch of quality of life things just consistent in the game. And I think part of it too is that the resources aren't as scarce as you would feel. I don't know. They balance it really well. I think the resource gathering is really balanced. And so it doesn't feel so bad of a grind. Also too, it's the building and the base building itself, while there are a lot of options, the way that they're kind of feeding it to you as you level up and as you are in these zones is a really great progression. So it doesn't feel overwhelming. And yet I initially, when I first started playing, because I put about 28 hours solo into this game, and then I put about another 25 hours. I've got 52 hours on this game so far. And yeah. And so, you know, in the beginning, I was like, oh, I feel like the crafting is so watered down. Like, for somebody that loves crafting survivals, I feel like they really were just kind of like, we want to minimize crafting in this. But I'm starting to realize that's not really the case. They just kind of, I guess, hold it behind different gates at a much more better progression. You know, like you need to start moving into another zone, and then you start unlocking more of these things. And so that's normally how it is, but at least in ARC, you can kind of get overwhelmed with the sheer amount of crafting and researching and things that you can select. Whereas in Dune, they've done a really nice job with the balance of that as well too. But yeah. Christian, I'm kind of curious what you wanted to say.
It's very easy to get stuck and this goes for any game, but it's very easy to get stuck in just like a very boring crafting loop where you have to get this to make that, and then that makes this, and then this makes that, and then that makes this. And it's just like after you see it a couple times, you're just like, oh, I know the pattern. You know, it's just like basically it's running you through the same loop. Like you have to craft something so you can make something to craft something to make something to craft something. And I don't know, like you play enough of those and it's just like, oh, I'm completely over that. Like that's not interesting at all. But again, going back to Abiotic Factory, like they had a really interesting take on crafting where you had to like actually guess from the resources that you had to guess what the recipe was. And if you were unsuccessful, then you couldn't craft it.
I had a point about PvP and I want to come back to it, but I did want to talk about this carrot and the Dune shaped stick kind of point of what I've been noticing in Dune. So to everyone's point, like the resources themselves aren't really that scarce. It is the journey to get to where those resources are that is fun and interesting. So that might look like a really dynamic dungeon with unexpected things happening and maybe a little bit of a story, or that might look like a journey across the desert and you have to go from rock to rock and avoid the sandworm or enemies or the Sardaukar ships that are scanning the desert from above. And so when you get there, yeah, you press E to get the resource out and it's fine. But they've just done an interesting thing on the scarcity point, is like they've really emphasized the journey, and the journey is what's fun, you know, like in any of these games. And so they've just highlighted that so beautifully in Dune. And the progression is quite obvious. It's like, right now it's scrap metal, then copper, then iron, then carbon, then fucking spice carbon. And it's like, okay,
yeah.
I see the tiers. They're very clearly tiered in like the crafting menu, and I understand that. But when I'm going out in the world and I'm having that experience, it doesn't really feel that way, because it's like, oh, the spice, to get the spice I have to go here, and then to get the carbon I have to go here, and that is a long trip, and I'm planning for that trip. And when I come back, yeah, I have enough resources to make everything I need, and the trip was exciting. So I think they've addressed that specific point.
And you know, my big issue with the crafting that I was describing is that you craft to craft. And what I would like to see games do, and what some of them probably do is you craft Dune.
No.
But the things that you craft, like, do they change your experience? How much do they change your experience in the game? Or do you just craft them just so you can craft another
So number
thing?
go up, right?
Yeah. So
what I've seen in Dune, by the way, with that is that I do feel like there is an emphasis that you really only want to craft the things that you need, and you really only want to research the things that you need. Part of that is because their research points, whatever. Every crafting survival has their little research thing, and like an arc, they call it engrams, and you have a certain point system where you can unlock certain things to learn how to make them, right? And so in Dune, it's the intel is what it's called, and you can go collect intel from different things, but it's scarce, so you want to be wise in what you're spending, and I think a lot of crafting survivals do that, but also Dune has such a way that like a lot of the things that you're going to craft and learn are relevant to what you're trying to do. So it does help with that. I also know that earlier you had mentioned that a lot of the crafting survivals don't have clear objectives. And I feel like this is something new that I've seen in Dune, and something that Christian talked a bit about too earlier already, is that the objectives in Dune are very clear and very, very obvious. It feels like there's quests. If not, there's contracts, and they explain where it is. They show you on the map. Or they don't. Some of the trials require a little riddle, and then you have to solve it and kind of use the landscape and the tools that you're seeing on the map to try and figure out where it might be. And then when you're close, it does show up and does kind of show you that, yeah, you're in the right area, and here's where you also need to go. So it's been very clear in doing that, while still also feeling like, pun intended, an open sandbox.
And I think something that sets apart Abiotic Factor is a fucking great game, but Dune has 2 games going, maybe 3 games. You have these single player journey experiences that are meant for you and your character to go on in this core quest line of the game that's teaching you about the different mechanics. And then you have contracts and other things that are happening in the world that you can do with your friends. So if you are a solo player, I think you have a pretty fun time playing Dune, because there is a clear sense of progression, which I didn't play Subnautica, but it sounds like very similar to what was happening in Subnautica, where you can move through this and have a compelling time, and it's not just like an overwhelming amount of sandbox stuff for you to contend with. And when we're playing with the group, it's kind of cool. It's like one person is going on their mushroom trip, which is like you sniff some spice and you go into this alternate dimension and you learn about a new mechanic in the game, essentially. Which are generally pretty fun. And you're like, oh, he's on his mushroom trip, he's out of the game. And then you come back and you have what you need to do the rest of the content. So yeah, it puts you on rails, which I didn't really like at the start, but then I learned to appreciate it. Maybe because I'm fucking addicted to this game. I don't know. But they've done a really good job with managing those 2 points, like progression and clear sense of understanding versus sandbox and going anywhere in the world. Yeah.
The balance of freedom and direction.
Yeah, and also I feel like with speaking of kind of management, I do feel like this team has done such an amazing, like Funcom has done such an amazing job with release with everything, because you also brought up another very good point that I also see in almost every crafting survival I play, Bobby, which is that these games are janky. They're buggy. There's like weird shit. Sometimes that weird shit makes for funny content. Like, for example, I have seen some of the funniest bugs coming out of Dune around Shai-Hulud the worm. I have seen the worm flying in the sky and wiggling around, and that's a funny bug. We introduced like 3 people to the game when they updated a patch and there were no worms. So I was
they
like,
just broke the
yo,
worms. Yeah.
they broke the worms. And I was like, and for anybody that doesn't know and hasn't played, the sandworm Shai-Hulud is like a huge part of obviously the Dune universe, but a massive part of this game, because you know, so many of the things, like Christian was saying, when you're on a solo journey or when you're traveling across the desert and that's the journey, the big thing is this worm. And it's a whole emotional thing. You like see this like vibration meter underneath. There's certain parts of the sand, that's the drum sand where you're calling the worm. There's quicksand where you're sinking as the worm is coming at you. You can outrun the worm, which is a super exciting thing. Just recently, Lotion and I, another member of our community, we were doing these like spice runs where we were running into the desert trying to collect as much spice as we could and run away, and every damn time that worm will show up and this thing just erupts. It's enormous and it just is yelling at you, and then when it's coming at you, it's like so intense and super fun, and it adds
so
a lot
fun.
of action. It's so much fun. And so to not have the worms was a big deal, and I was like, you know what, guys, enjoy it while it lasts. They're gonna fix it, because this team, like I said, I got the deluxe edition, so I played a whole week before it came out, and that was about 29 hours of only solo play. It's still my furthest play, because then I joined the DLG private server, which you can find the answer for how do I join the DLG private server on our Discord. There's a little plug right there. But anyway, people playing it, when the worm came back, it was really funny really funny to watch everybody's reaction again to the first time of experiencing these worms. But just as a point to that bugs and the jankiness of games, I think what makes Dune unique so far that I'm seeing is that this team is so on it. I mean, they are sending patches out almost every single day. And for somebody that played it day one pre-release and then also played it like official release and has been playing it almost every day since, like, it's a drastic difference in how much work they've put into really optimizing the game and making it better and really addressing any issues and bugs that pop up. I mean, they are fixing shit fast, which is awesome. I haven't really seen a team do that, and it's great that Dune is.
Like the New World server conundrum that was never solved. Just people stopped playing the game. They're like, I guess I'm not playing this game because I can never get into a server. And to be fair, that team did work and solved it within a couple weeks. I think there was like 100 new servers that opened, but like to fix it in the same day is crazy. Just really quick, piggyback off. Usually you get this in MMOs where they're like, oh, I remember the plague in World of Warcraft when that went out of control and killed 100 players and it broke out of the zone and it was like a game-breaking memory from a bug. I think people are going to remember the no worms thing. They'll be like, oh, you guys are joining? Oh, you should have been here when there was no worms. You know, like it'll be like a reference point, like pre-worm, post-worm. Like, I hope you get that in MMOs because it all shares the same code base, not with crafting survivals usually. And to have that happen in Dune is really special. And I kind of hope we have more of those type of moments where they unintentionally break a key component of the game, because that was fun. Yeah, it was a fun switch up.
That was very fun. Yeah, and there really was a member of our community who jumped on and then was super pissed that he didn't spend the whole day playing because he needed to go from one zone to the other, which is a huge drive across the desert, and it's just you and the worm. And he's like, "Oh, I could have avoided all of that."
Yeah, but
I don't know.
It's the same in those private servers who do like the expanded resources mechanic. People, you don't know what you know. You want the worm there, okay? like you think you don't want the danger, but like, nah, that's what makes these journeys so fun, is avoiding this fucking huge worm that's coming at you.
Exactly, because it's one of the few spots in the whole game where if you die, your shit's gone. It is gone. You have to start completely over. Just last night, I was playing with some of our longest listeners, Lotion and Cricket Soldier, and we were trying to drive across the desert, and I think the Lotion was like, hey, I really recommend, we really need to stick together. And we're like, yeah, okay. And then Cricket Soldier just like boost and beelines it. I think I get distracted and took a wrong turn, and then we start splitting up so that I'm like, oh, I got to catch up to Cricket. The worm comes, and it's like chasing me and Lotion, and we're like, and like Cricket is like fine. He's like off watching it in the distance. And then I get eaten by the worm and lose everything after I just got done updating my bike and all of my stuff. And Bobby's sitting here going, yep, this is why I don't play this game.
It's not going to respect, the worm does not respect your time. I would say that's accurate.
No. But the worm is the one thing that is like, like a big deal because of the fact that you won't get any of your stuff back. And it's like a true hard reset in terms of a character. But it's also created some really funny content because I've built a base right on the edge and have watched a bunch of people drive across the desert and just miss the worm, which is a very exciting thing, even as somebody watching a stranger do. Like I just watched last night, Cricket Soldier just avoid the worm. He had the worm chasing him and then just made it in the nick of time, and the worm came up and growled and like stared at him. And then moved away, like kind of looked at it like, oh, fine, you get away this time. Like it's just so good. It's so much fun. It's
just like in the movies. This game. Yeah, if you're on the rock face and the worm comes up to just say hi, I can't eat you because you're on the secret rocks. Even though theoretically it could smash itself against the rocks and probably do some damage. But anyway, so me and Amanda, nonstop talk. We love this game. Bobby, I just want to give you an opportunity. Is there anything, questions, clarifying questions, or points to respond to?
You know, I do have a question because Dune has a lot of lore. And it's a big IP. It's not necessarily Star Wars or Harry Potter, but it is a big IP. And whenever you have a game based on a big IP, you really got to play by the rules of the lore. You've got to find a way to work in the worm and the scarcity of water and desert power and shields and all those things that we know from the movies and books. And I'm just kind of curious how well you think they've done that, particularly with water, because it seems like Dune seems like a natural fit for crafting survival, because if you've read the books or seen the movies, you know it's just a very harsh environment where people are really trying to survive on top of vying for power.
Yeah, water discipline, that's fucking number one. They've done, I think, a great job. So staying alive isn't too difficult because there are these dewy flowers that grow in like the basins of some of the rock, the shady areas, that you can harvest the dew for and get like a small amount of water. And that'll keep you up for maybe like 10 minutes if you stay out of the sun. Right. And we're going to have to touch on the sun. So on the water part, I think is excellently done. You harvest blood from enemies, and then you return to your base, put them in your blood purifier, just like in the books, and that turns into water. You can harvest their bodies later and have their whole body compressed into liquid instead of just extracting their blood. The water feels really, really compelling. You store it at your base. You can bring it with you on journeys, like big containers of water. You can wear a still suit that automatically collects your excess water so you can last longer in the desert, but it doesn't have the same armor properties, so you have to kind of pick and choose when you wear it if you're going to like a PvE zone. So there's all these trade-off decisions, but I think what makes the water interesting is the sun mechanic. Like, I'm so happy. No, happy isn't the right word. I'm in awe of like the environment design. Like they have to keep this sun and the route that the sun takes over all these rock formations in the game. And they all make sense. Like oftentimes an enemy will be on the sunny spot of a rock. So not only are you having to kill this enemy or extract this resource, but you have to contend with the harshness of the sun. And so do you go at night? Maybe there's extra enemies. There's Sardaukar floating ahead. Do you sneak around and try to stick to like some shady jut outs to get to this resource? Do you go, fuck it, I can take some sun exposure, lose some water because I brought a bunch from the base? The sun makes this game so fucking awesome, and it increases everything. It reduces your health, it makes you fatigued, it expels the water from your still suit and your inventory. So it is like a serious consideration. And just like in the books, just like in the movies, I've just never played a game where the sun was one of the main components, and it's cool to live in. Super immersive. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about it, obviously.
Yeah, the amount of detail to the environment, like Christian was saying, I think really has set up this game for so much success in both really doing Dune as an IP justice, but also making it an interesting survival. Because you don't want to be out in the sun this whole time. That does impact everything and your water intake. And there is a certain point in the game when you're first starting out where you do start to feel like, I think it's when you start making iron, you kind of feel it where you're like, oh my God, I need so much water. How am I going to get it? Because a lot of things start requiring water like a resource. So it's a resource for your survival, and it's a resource to craft. So it becomes quite a thing. But there's a whole bunch of things, like when you have a dew harvester, that helps and makes a big difference. Like Christian was saying, you go around with these like blood bags, and you just go out, and it motivates you to go out and kill and find action, because it's going to bring back water is what it's actually going to do, which is just... Yeah, it's great. So I think that they handled the water mechanic really, really well.
So it sounds like you guys obviously love this game. I was wondering if we could get some numbers on this, though. Like, what's the Steam reviews? How many people are playing, like, on Steam charts? Like, I want to get a second opinion here.
He doesn't trust us because we're too into the spice, Amanda. That's fucking crazy.
That's fair. So just to give you an idea, that's all right. That's fair. We've been converted. We've been converted, but okay. So it officially released on June 10th, right? And since then, it's 86% very positive reviews. There's about 23,602 user reviews right now. And so,
170,000 people playing right now at this second. All-time peak, 175. That to me, like, usually you see such a hard drop-off. No, people...
that's a steady player base.
Yeah.
Well, things help, like our guild. I feel like, Christian, we've got to talk a little bit about our DLG guild on Dune
community
Awakening.
rocks. Our community
rocks. Yeah. So we have a DLG guild called Emilio's El Sayal, and that El Sayal is the Fremen word for rain of sand. So as you know, Emilio's left us for now. So we have a rain of sand for him in Dune Awakening. There are 14 people in this guild right now as we speak. You can have up to 32, and we have a private server. But the way that works is that all of the PvE areas are pretty much going to be within our private server. So you're probably only going to be running into other people in the guild. And then if we want to go out to PvP, they take all of the like sub servers underneath a regional server and combine them into that PvP for one. So then we would be essentially trying to kill players from other servers in that PvP area. Yeah. But you have to go into that. You have to like actively choose to go there, and it would be a whole thing. Yeah, it's the deep desert. It's different. But
my point for the PvP fits into this because it's like what Bobby and you were both saying was the person with the most time wins. And also with you talking about people griefing in the server and their bases, they've just, I feel like, leveled the playing field completely by introducing this concept of the deep desert. So the deep desert reconfigures its environment, I think every couple of weeks, because these sandstorms come through and different rock faces are showing. So you can't really get an advantage. You can get a temporary advantage, but you don't really know the lay of the land. The time advantage is cut from you. You might go in with the best equipment, but you still don't know what you're walking into. You still don't know who's there, who set up a base, what does it look like, because the environment there is always shifting. And then it's completely removed griefing from the game. I mean, if you have a private server like we do, but also on, I think, public servers as well, you can like build your base over a dewy flower spot and build up walls so people can't access it. I guess that's kind of griefing. But like, other than that, you can't go around killing people's bases or waiting for them to emerge and shoot them in the head. Like, they've walked this fine line. There's probably a Dune reference here somewhere, but they've walked this fine line between PvP and PvE in such an awesome way with the deep depth. My mind is blown. Like when the sandworm comes out, and that's a bit stretched, but
Yeah.
What do they call it when you walk a certain way so it doesn't attract the worm with the irregular rhythm? Is it sand walking?
desert.
I think it was.
Yeah, I
desert
don't know.
Walking, sand walking.
Yeah.
I will say, to elaborate a little bit on that wipe mechanic for the PvP for Dune Awakening. It's called a Coriolis Storm, and it happens only in the deep desert. It will wipe anything and everything in the area, and it happens once a week. It seems to be happening on Tuesdays, but I could be wrong. We're also not exactly focused on PvP just yet. One of the things that Bobby brought up that I think is a very, very valid concern, and something that a lot of crafting survivals really do struggle with, is this concept of being out of sync in co-op, where you have your buddies and they're like on the steel tier and you're like, I'm just building my little, thatch wooden house, and they're like got this metal elaborate crazy factory, and you're just like, how could we ever play together? I'm hoping that Christian and I, the way that we're approaching the guild, is going to actually solve that problem. Each zone, we have created essentially a guild hall where there's a big area of mostly the things in that area, and people can use them. And this world is so large that I don't know, I've encouraged every guild member to build your own base wherever you are, and especially in the first zone, it doesn't matter, but in the second zone and moving up even more in this map, people building their own bases is super cool, but we have a guild hall coming together for everyone. And I do feel like the overlap between zones is larger. It just makes more sense to go back and go through. So what I'm getting at is that it does allow for better co-op, even if people are at different points of the story and different points of their progression.
Yeah.
We're trying really hard to kind of stick with that.
Our first guild hall has everything someone might need to move quickly through the game, but it's not going to take away from their experience. Because they can still build their own base and they're encouraged to. But, for example, there's a lot of scrap metal, there's a lot of iron, there's a lot of the starting granite resource. There's everything you need to cut down the amount of time you need to spend on the game, but you still need to go on those single player journeys. You still need to explore the area. So it's really just a way to elevate people's experience and expedite them without holding their hand, because the mechanics of the game don't really allow that. So we have that guild hall in the first area. We have the guild hall in the second area. So you can kind of hop to these points of interest, I guess, and make your journey quicker to catch up with us as we fucking
or we
have our
kind of
adventures.
have them or we have them there. Another really great purpose of the guild hall is that if you wanted to be I want to go explore this shipwreck, but I don't want to go alone, you could reach out to somebody and be like, okay, well, let's meet at the guild hall then. And that's a good meeting point, because it's also very central to stuff. Christian and I are trying to keep that in mind when we're building and designing places of where is it central, so that way more people could come and go through it as they please and as they want. But especially in the beginning, part of the objectives really are to teach you how to play the game, and part of that, of course, is base building. So you can kind of expedite it, but you still would have to do it yourself. There just might be a lot of resources to make it faster, so that way you're not doing a bunch of time suck into mining rocks. But one of the things I didn't get to touch on with the rocks and the mining specifically is I really like how this game does it. It feels like a mini game inside of it for mining specifically, or just using the cut array. You use this cut array tool for so many things. You can break down metal locked doors, and when you scan it to see where you need to actually shoot, it almost like a welding gun is kind of what it looks like. But you aim at these things and it shows you, okay, well, if you cut the hinges, then this door will fall off. And that makes sense. But these are little details, I think, in the game that it's just really nice that they put. It isn't just just hit the door with this thing and it works. You have to look and see where it is. And then in the rock, it's every time you scan this ore rock with the cut array, it shows you kind of the weak points, and it's like a design that you craft on it. And that changes. So the only other crafting survival I can think of that I've seen something similar to this is Rust. Rust would have these little X's on a tree or on a rock that was okay, hit this point and you'll get the maximum amount of stuff, and it'll get, you know, removed faster so you can keep going. And they have that in Dune as well, which is really nice and fun, but you can also use it for other things too, to progress and get into like hidden rooms and stuff. And so I think it's just awesome. It feels really interactive, and
maybe the bigger point I think for me for that is like the sense of scale in the game. Like you're cutting away resources that are like so comically big, like a rock face that's like 3 times the size of your player character essentially, and it just feels epic to do this like little mini game where you are cutting out a little bit of it and then it like explodes and you get all the resources. But also like just like walking around the desert, man, like that shit is fucking beautiful. Like there's the biggest spires in the distance and you're like, oh my god, what's over there? And then the sandworm will blow out in the middle of the desert. You'll be like, oh my god, that's huge. There's people in orthocopters running around. There's these huge crashed spaceships that are so interesting to explore. Like I think they could have easily made this game not so interesting. Like, oh, it's a desert crafting survival game. You're in the fucking desert and yeah, there you go. But like it just, every place feels super intentional. This isn't like a random gen on Minecraft that things are accidentally interesting. It's like, now we purposefully made this here as like an interesting thing for you to discover, and it feels handcrafted and super immersive and fun to explore with friends.
There's good details, yeah.
Yeah. And then the base building itself is just like so fucking I'm deep in the base building sauce. I don't know. I shared a little YouTube video of our Ironworks base. Did any of you get around to watching that, or have you been to the Ironworks base?
I officially moved to the Ironworks base. That's why I was like messaging you. So yeah, I think the very first guild hall I built, and of course I built it in like a borderline PvP way of just like, yeah, it's a square, it works. And then like Christian came in and added a whole bunch of like beautiful decorations. There's like a little area where you can read books. And then he was like, yeah, I'm going to be working on the other base. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then I saw it like initially and I was like, wow, it looks really nice. And he's like, I hate it. I'm going to be working on it. And then I went and visited it, and holy shit, I feel like anybody listening to this podcast who is playing Dune Awakening, make it a point. Try your best to get to the Ironworks base. Reach out to us if you need help on how to get there. But like, Christian, you've done such an amazing job with it. It looks amazing. We've got little micro studio apartments for everybody if they want them. We've got a garage, we've got a whole bunch. It's a wonderful base. It's also in such a great spot too. You picked such a fantastic spot to build that base as well too.
I want to paint a little picture, like it's right beside this old iron mine that's hugging this cliff face, and there's a bunch of difficult enemies on it and all the resources that we need, and it's just like such an epic thing to be in the shadow of. And it's just around the corner in kind of like a half shaded zone, and there is a garage that, as you're evading the sandstorms or sandworms, something that is super awesome is if you can just drive right into your base, the doors open, shut behind you. Phew, I outran that thing. So there's like a through line entry garage that mechanically is cool. I built it over a bunch of dewy flowers so we can hop down into this little open, almost like ventilation shaft and harvest these flowers for us if you're feeling thirsty. It's got a great view. There's like an Assassin's Creed tower you can jump off of. Like I could do that because the game is just so good with the base building. Like I played Conan Exiles, and this has a similar system of you can put blueprints that don't build the thing you're trying to build, so you can just see what it looks like, and then you actually spend the materials to construct that. And because they decided to go that way, I don't have to spend resources figuring out something fucking sucks, which just makes the base building so much more satisfying. The worst thing in Minecraft is like, I made something 9 blocks long when it was supposed to be 10 blocks long. Now the whole feng shui of my home is ruined.
Yeah. But this is an example of that quality of life thing that I like, to me, that I was thinking of, that is really unique to Dune compared to a lot of other crafting survivals, especially something like Ark, which is that like they have this preview kind of mode of what you're describing, where you can see the blueprint of how it's going to look before, instead of having to find out by messing up and then destroy it and rebuild it, which is what happens in a lot. Yeah, that's not fun, and it happens in a lot of crafting survivals, but they really took care of that in this quality of life. It's great.
Yeah, and I don't know, a little Easter, not really an Easter egg, but like you can visit like Arakeen and these NPC bases that are part of the shared world with all the other sietches, with all the other like sub-servers. So you can run into people and kind of talk to them. And I was at the trader and I was talking to this guy. I was like, hey, what are you doing here? This is my first time at Arakeen. And he's like, oh, I'm buying all the advanced structure decorations and types from this trader. Like I've saved up my Solarian, I'm buying that. And so I went over and I was like, oh, I didn't know that was a thing. And there's like sets of furniture you could buy and wall angles and windows. And it's just so much more, it has so much more depth than you might think after opening up the crafting tool one time and being like, oh, I only have these blocks. Why is that? No, it's a whole thing. They have all sorts of stuff. So yeah, just a great job on the base build. Bobby, are we convincing? Have we moved the needle? Have we increased the water supply?
Oh, I don't know.
What's our spice level at?
Yeah.
God. No.
I feel like I'm going to check in a week and see how everyone still feels about it. See if this has got the staying power. And then we'll see.
I dare you. Yeah, I dare you. I'm confident that this thing is going to be a slow burn and we're going to still be playing it. I'm confident in that because it's great. And listen, as Christian's talking about the crafting and the base building really can go deep. It's kind of your choice. Like he just said, like you go to this Arakeen and you find it out and you get all these things unlocked. So that way then you can craft more, or you don't have to. If you don't care. If you don't care about building the coolest, like chill pad with your homies of having the special couch, you don't have to do that at all. You could just run around, fuck with the worm, kill a bunch of things, like, and just have all the action and have the storyline of Dune and focus on that because the storyline's good, the cinematics are good. It's such a great game, and I'm hoping that the way Christian and I are looking at the guild and how we're moving across the guild, we won't have that out of sync issue with co-op, because with 14 people it does feel like everybody for the most part is right around the same level, to where they're like running into each other in these very wholesome, funny ways. Because I will warn that the HUD doesn't really show an enemy versus like a person. So it has happened already where like people are going through a dungeon and they run into somebody else in the guild and they didn't realize it. So they're shooting at each other thinking that they're enemies, and they're sitting there going, God damn, this is really hard. Why is this person not fighting? We already had that.
Advanced AI.
Yeah, but instead it's another guild member. So, but it adds and it helps a lot with the immersion, especially if you really like Dune.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great game. 100 out of 10. 30 Shy Haloods out of 20. 45 Shield Wall. I could go on, but I won't because, it's probably was bad to start. Okay, so we're going to end the show. Of course, the show is brought to you by John Vogel and Truthbringer. Thank you so much, guys, for supporting us on Patreon above the normal level. You know, you could give us the $5 a month, but you guys decided, hey, I want my name said every episode.
These are the real Lisan Al Gaibs, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Lisan Al Gaib. Yeah. So thank you about that. And I think we're going to play an ad. Sorry, this just in on a Tradies Radio. We have an ad coming in. So let's listen to that.
This episode is brought to you by all the different ways that you can die in a crafting survival. Let's get into some of them. So say you're playing Project Zomboid and you die. Well, now you gotta go and find the exact zombie of yourself, kill it, and get your stuff back. Because you died, became a zombie. Realism. You could be chopping down some trees. I know, it's Bobby's favorite. Then you could die from that tree, falling on you. There's a few games like that, actually. But the first one coming to mind is Valheim. You could spend weeks building the most perfect base, only to return and find one corner that has just been chiseled out by somebody while you were sleeping. Damn you for sleeping. And then now, boom, you're dead. All your shit stolen. Thanks, Ark. You could also spend hours and days and weeks getting the best gear, going in all the dungeons, and then they're gone, you're gone, because you accidentally hit the wrong button and you fell out of your flyer, such as, a wyvern, and you fall to your death and die in the middle of nowhere in the map. And now you gotta figure out how the fuck to get there. My favorite, though, you're riding the sandbike with the boys over the beautiful hills of Arrakis, and then this big old Shai-Hulud comes after you. So you're screaming, you're running, and you're just going at full speed until you scream for Valhalla as he eats you alive, and all your friends watch in horror from the line that you're trying to make it, just from Zone 1 to Zone 2. Thanks, Dune Awakening.
Okay, that's a good.
Did that convince you to join, Bobby?
Yeah. Sick ad, bro. I don't know. He doesn't seem convinced. He's smiling politely. Okay, you can join the Discord and join us on Dune Awakening, but you don't have to if you don't want. You can also just say hi to fellow people playing video games, kind of join in on the community and, what really makes this show special. A little bit of a tongue twister there. Next episode, we're going to be talking about, I think, deck builders in general. We didn't plan this. It's one of our normal episodes where we just talk about the games we've been playing. But Bobby has hoisted Monster Train 2 on the altar of best games ever. That's a direct quote. He said, hey, put that in the show. And I broke Nine Kings, the game, just in time to burn out on deck builders entirely. So I feel like we're coming at this from opposite angles, opposite times. So that should be an interesting show. My name is Christian. Thank you to Amanda and Bobby. And Amanda, what do we have to close the show here?
We've got a very important PSA for everybody out there that's, sand dancing on the dunes out in Dune Awakening on Arrakis. So please enjoy and tune in. This PSA is very important. A little PSA. Make sure you store all of your things into a secure location when driving around the desert of Arrakis. You don't want to get got by a Shai-Hulud because you'll never get it back.
That's the...
Perfect.